House Dems open to compromise on 99ers bill. The Democrats in the House of Representatives who are pushing for additional jobless aid for the long-term unemployed say they are willing to compromise with Republican leadership on cutting spending from the budget to prevent the cost of new benefits from adding to the deficit. In a Wednesday letter to House Speaker John Boehner, Barbara Lee and Bobby Scott wrote, "We want to work with you to identify how best to finance this legislation and ensure its swift passage." Earlier this year, Lee and Scott introduced legislation to give the long-term unemployed an additional 14 weeks of benefits. Their bill, which Lee's office estimates would add roughly $16 billion to the deficit, went nowhere in the midst of a Republican budget-cutting frenzy. But I guess Hillary Clinton wants $100 million to go to the Lebanon army is a better deal than those who are suffering here in America. 44 million Americans are now dependent on food stamps. Imagine that, the greatest, most powerful nation on earth, and you got 44 million depending on food stamps. But when the US dollar becomes worthless as a result of hyperinflation, the government will no longer have the power to support these Americans, and many of them will simply starve to death. Does it look like they're concerned? In the meantime, here is another Republican brainless idea. Ending foreclosure assistance programs right now is a terrible idea. Terminating HAP without a credible and stronger alternative would be contrary to our goal of helping homeowners stay in their homes. Did it ever occur to you that, if they play with unemployment benefits, that will leave you homeless anyway? You got to love them heartless morons in Washington. But wait. Leading House Democrats held a fundraiser on Tuesday for Representative Gabrielle Giffords, who is recovering from brain injuries she sustained during an assassination attempt in January. Do you ever think they will do the same for the unemployed in this country? I thought not. Actors and actresses have started a campaign to feed the hungry, knowing the crisis there is due to the loss of unemployment. Once in a blue moon, you might see a commercial on TV, but for the most part continuing coverage of the crisis in Japan and how the United States was quick to jump into action, but slow to act when it comes to the needy in this country. There are millions of suffering people in this country and no continuance of news coverage. But, you will hear of other countries that are without food, water and the basics of life. It simply blows my mind. Are we just as important? Do we even matter? Just to give you an idea that the unemployed and those suffering here in this country don't matter, I'm going to give you a few, what they think is newsworthy and more important to mention other than those suffering and seem forgotten. The Obama administration must abandon its nuclear energy policy. Japan earthquake 2011. Before, after satellite images show extent of devastation. Jonas and Green breakup. 11 funny St. Patrick's Day quotes by comedians. Michelle Obama's garden garb. Did you hear anything about those unemployed and suffering in America? I didn't. You see, if you ignore the problem, it goes away. While millions of Americans went without for months on end, the government and the news media would like to burn it into your head by continuing coverage of other matters and to ignore the real problem, the people here in this country. Please don't misunderstand me. The crisis in Japan is newsworthy. My prayers and thoughts go out to them. This tragedy is terrible. The news media like MSNBC and Fox News will tell you a 30-second story about Libya only to turn its attention back to what they call breaking news, something they told you just 5 minutes ago. Seriously, that's what they call breaking news. They burn this into your head over and over, keeping you glued to their station as if they are the only ones covering this tragedy. What about the news about America? Another 30 seconds and it's back to Japan, where they will tell you about the hungry and suffering they are going through. But what about those in this country that are without food, water and for months have been in the cold while most of you were sleeping in a warm bed? For all of the winter months, those unemployed and homeless people have tried to get shelter in shelters, but the numbers that ended up under a bridge because these shelters were full. Many innocent children had to suffer without a Christmas, without food, without the basics of life. Many have died, but you never heard about it. But all they want to tell you is that what they want to tell you, keeping your attention turned away from the real problem. The American people that are unemployed, homeless and hungry. Just once would I love to see round-the-clock coverage of these Americans suffering, having the news crews interviewing them, showing how they are struggling, letting everybody know the real truth. Just once. Is that too much to ask for MSNBC or Fox News? Will it kill your profit margin to cover something like that? I see ads placed all over the place asking for your help in the Japan crisis. Where are the ads for helping the unemployed and homeless in America? Oh yeah, there aren't any to be found anywhere. I guess, maybe you are forgotten. I guess you're not that important. Earlier I mentioned that they refused the unemployed an extension for 14 weeks because it will add to the deficit at a cost of $16 billion, but Hillary Clinton thinks that $100 million is not a problem for the Lebanon army. Just think for one moment, $100 million will surely take care of those unemployed and homeless people, don't you think?